Hello again, I'm Mike, and this is Keepers of the Word. Today's topic is magic in media, bringing in 2023 with this. And I have special guest, Magick Mike. Who better to have this with right at the moment? So how you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Oh, good, good. How was your day?
It was pretty great, man. Just a usual day at work, but I really enjoyed all the rain that we're getting and all that fun stuff. So it definitely gave it a nice vibe today. So definitely very
Right
grateful.
on, man. So today we're talking about magic in media. The portrayal of magic in media culture offers insight into societal attitudes, beliefs about magic, and how it is perceived and mainstreamed in society. It also reveals the influence on real life practitioners and potential future trends. The topic is relevant because it touches on media, culture, spirituality, belief, perception, and the evolution of societal attitudes and beliefs. In this episode, we can expect to learn more about portrayal of magic in various forms of media, such as TV shows, video games, books. We'll learn how magic is depicted in these media and how it influences our understanding and perception of magic in real life. This episode, I want to explore the ways in which media has influenced the adoption of practice of magic in contemporary society and how it has been incorporated into various forms of media and entertainment. We see this massive rise right now of, you know, witch talk, right? And we have a lot of people out there doing their thing, finding themselves. But I do have a feeling that a lot of this is trendy. A lot of people are just picking it up because it looks cool. And diving into the actual media, starting with, let's say, TV shows, right? Some very mainstream shows like, say, The Magicians, Rings of Power, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones really stood out a lot to me in the past because magic is portrayed as being rare and misunderstood by the majority of the people, and those who possess magical abilities are often feared and mistrusted. Overall, the portrayal of magic in Game of Thrones is characterized by a sense of mystery and danger, and it's depicted as being powerful and unpredictable. Those who use it understand that there's serious consequences to using it. For instance, Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons, Arya Stark, the three-eyed raven, Brandon Stark, and the Night King, of course, the real bad guy here. So in Game of Thrones, you're not really introduced to it right away, but you know it's there. And then out of nowhere, they start talking about the old gods and the new, right? And how they intertwine and how there was a history before the new gods. So it's kind of like thinking about that reminds me of Canaan, the Canaanites, and ancient Samaria, how it kind of evolved into something new. It was a real interesting take on how the writers introduced the magicians and whether they were good or bad. They had specific powers and did certain things and worshiped specific gods. But for me, it was more of reminiscent of Lord of the Rings in a way. You know, it's kind of that kind of well, we have a mission, and the mission requires magic and warriors, and and without them, you're the world's going to be lost. What do you think, Mikey?
Honestly, one of my favorite things about, yeah, I totally agree with you. Number one, it is really interesting that for the most part, most of the magic that's in Game of Thrones is usually like negative. So, for example, when like that shadow creature kills, um, I forget like what the character's name, but when that sorceress was able to create like a shadow creature that was able to kill people like from afar, like certain things like that, most of the time magic is seen as something negative, and then usually um, heroic acts are done just through action. They're usually not magical. They're usually just a heroic act, and like that's ultimately what leads it. So it is interesting how they decide to portray magic in Game of Thrones. I definitely find it really interesting. One of the things that I enjoyed about Game of Thrones was the idea that there's always a price to be paid when you use magic. So if magic was used for selfish or political reasons, the character usually suffers quite a bit and is usually killed off in some kind of fitting, karmic way. The scales of justice are always corrected, and the ill will of always corrects the ill will of the practitioner, which is very similar to even like magic today. Most of the time, when you talk to people who are modern day practitioners, there is always a price. Whether that no matter what you're trying to accomplish. Um, and this kind of goes with that, although sometimes even the good guys have to sacrifice themselves to fulfill a certain end. So even with good manifestation, there is a mode of sacrifice that usually comes about. And that's one of the big parts of Game of Thrones is karma, the role that karma plays in the magical realm. And so I think that's like the biggest takeaway from that.
I agree with you, Mike. And I feel that not only that TV shows, like for instance, Wednesday, The Magicians, Rings of Power, and then now we have the newest version, the House of Dragons. I feel magic is starting to become way more mainstream than we probably like, and not for selfish reasons. I think it's because the way we view it's a path that is walked and is taken seriously, not something to, you just wear it as a badge and you can take it off whenever you want. It's a way you live, and an ethos that you adopt and use within your ritual or within your tradition. And I feel that today with TV shows, it's kind of becoming bastardized in a way. But there are some TV shows that kind of give it a little more validity, right? So moving on to the movies, there's two movies that actually I was thinking of, and one was Magic, and the other one was it was more portrayed as those who have psychic ability, right? So we'll talk about Doctor Strange and Doctor Sleep. So Doctor Strange, in the movie Doctor Strange, magic is portrayed as hidden and unknown to the majority of the population, and those who possess magical abilities are often trained in secret by ancient and mysterious organizations. Sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, magic is depicted as being connected to the multiverse and the manipulation of time and space. The main character, Doctor Strange, learns to harness magic and becomes a powerful sorcerer, using his abilities to protect the world from threats that are beyond the understanding of normal people. Overall, the portrayal of magic in Doctor Strange is characterized by a sense of mystery and wonder, and is depicted as being a powerful and mysterious force that can be harnessed by those who have the knowledge and skills to do so. So here in Doctor Strange, he comes upon a group and they teach him, and it's kind of like being initiated into an order that practices, understands the responsibility behind the practices. Like you said, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into magic, whether it's good intent or bad intent. You have to give something. In Doctor Strange, his life was on the line, and magic helped him, but his ego was what was holding him back. And that was a really good metaphor for what magic really is. You can't really have an ego, you know, especially if you're a practitioner. But I feel people who go down specific spiritual paths have to find their group, like Doctor Strange did, and then build themselves from there. Whether they become autonomous. They're their own person. They roll by themselves. They do their own thing, or they roll with a group and they're doing things. What kind of things? I don't know, but they're doing things. What do you think, Mike?
Well, one of the things that that you touched on, and I think it was perfect, was the idea of a path. And so, um, even though in Doctor Strange, obviously, a lot of the magic that's portrayed is nothing like what magic is, like what real magic is as a ceremonial magician. One of the things that I loved is that he had to embark on like this really treacherous path. He had to be what's called Mitch Horowitz always calls those who embark on these certain paths seekers, and I've adopted that same word for it, is that, less so
They're
identifying with
seekers.
being a ceremonial magician or a yogi or a witch or a sorcerer, and just calling yourself a seeker. That's a great way to kind of look at it, is we're all seeking something. And yeah, there's a lot of sacrifice. One of the things that he has to do is pretty much like be beaten on the steps of the steps of the temple until they finally relent and allow him to go in. And that's actually how a lot of those Eastern temples are. A lot of people think these monks are, very peaceful, loving people, but they come out there with switches and they beat you, and it's a way to test your resilience. Just like how we have the chamber of reflection, it's something that tests your resilience and your resolve in order to see if you're going to be a good candidate, for that path. And so, yeah, sometimes the universe demands that we have to prove ourselves in order to be able to attain higher knowledge. And I think that that's like one of the biggest takeaways, at least for me, from Doctor Strange, is that idea of you having to, prove yourself worthy to the universe, having fortitude. That's a huge thing.
Kind of segueing into Doctor Sleep. This is a different doctor, but I felt that they kind of correlated because in Doctor Sleep, Ewan McGregor, the character,
Mm-hmm.
he's by himself most of his life, doesn't understand what's going on and the power that he has. But when he realizes that there's an actual group looking for people like him to take their power because that's what keeps them alive, that goes into the negative versions of what some groups are. And I don't know of any. I can't point things out. And when people generalize and say, oh, it's the Illuminati or it's Bohemian Grove, or they even throw Freemasons or Lucifer or Satan worshippers or whatever. The reality is, unless you've seen it or know who or what, you can't really pinpoint it. But there are groups out there that do shit like that. There are groups out there that do evil, bad things. That Doctor Sleep was hitting the nail on the head with that, and it probably opened some eyes. Especially with the whole Epstein thing and all that. With the kids, and it made it real. It made it okay. Maybe these people don't have those type of powers, but that doesn't mean that they're not doing what they're doing. You hear a lot of stories, of situations or people being in situations, and you wonder, like, shit, if you're ever put in some situation like that, what are you going to do? It's going to be a hard situation. Well, first of all, don't ever put yourself in that situation. Don't hang around with those kind of people, right? That's number one. But number two is if you're ever in those situations, what do you do? How do you get out of it? Or if you're hanging around a group of people that haven't let you in their circle yet, but you have questions, or they're very they're up to no good. They have bad energy. Um, I've been around people like that, unfortunately, in my life, and I've dealt with folks who just are bad energy or do fucked up shit to people. People who have bad intent towards other people, and that's in ritual, and especially in the Santeria community. It's huge with that shit, unfortunately. But there's always somebody doing work on somebody, and I feel in this movie, Doctor Sleep, it was portrayed in a way that really got your attention. It was really really eye opening to me. The whoever wrote it or whoever did, you know what they were trying to say. They were pointing at the people like Epstein. They were pointing at the upper echelon, the people that everybody kind of points at. They don't know for sure, but oh, it's Illuminati or it's Bohemian Grove. We don't know 100% who or what or when, but we do know that these things are happening. That's one thing I can say. Now, Mike, have you ever had any instances or encounters with those type of groups or people?
Yeah, I mean, um, there's times where like, you'll be in certain circles, like, you'll be in magical circles, and somebody will be talking about a certain group that they're a part of, and some of the things that they are trying to do and accomplish, and you can just feel that it's like not right. You can feel that it's something where people are more or less allowing themselves to become open to what some people call like that left hand path, or black magic. And those are things that I definitely try to steer away from, because as tantalizing as it might be, as obviously, like, the idea of having power and all these different things is very, very attractive, but that comes with a price. It comes with a really heavy price. And I personally believe that in order for the 99% to pretty much allow, because we are in a more or less a social contract. That's what, like, society is. It's a moral, or civilization. It's a moral contract, or a it's a it's a contract, that we're a social contract. That's what I was trying to say, between us and the 1%. And we pretty much we surrender everything to the 1%, and say, hey, as long as I have a roof over my head and clothes and food and things like that, I'm going to allow you guys to run this ship. And we allow it. That is something that we consciously do as a collective. And so and a lot of times those people who are at the 1%, like, they want everything, and they want every single way that they could possibly retain that power, because the thought of losing that power makes them very anxious and makes them very upset. They literally will have nervous breakdowns. Just because a guy loses, a couple $1 million in the stock market, sometimes they kill themselves. Like, this is very, very heavy magic. Money is magic. Money is literally an exchange of, you know, it's more or less a recall on any good or service at any given point in time. They're biosurvival tickets is really what money is. And the idea of losing their, hoard of biosurvivor tickets drives these people insane. So they do certain rituals and things like that in order to be able to uh, retain that power and that money. And that's why, like, a lot of the times we love seeing those people fall, don't we? Because it is one hell of a fall when they do. So, you know, um, yeah, I've
It's
seen
a
this kind of
massive
thing
fall.
before. Yeah, there's grimoires out there that have, magic that has to do with, child sacrifice and all these different, rituals. Like, those things didn't necessarily disappear. At least I don't think so.
It's sad that it exists, but it's out there.
I agree
So
100%.
moving on to video games, man.
Oh,
Video
yeah.
games portray magic in a way that is romantic, I guess, in a way. For instance, the best one that I've played VR, and I love it, is Skyrim.
Mm.
In the game, magic is depicted as being a valuable tool that can be used to defeat enemies, solve puzzles, and interact with environments in various ways. The player character can choose to specialize in one or more schools of magic and can learn new spells and abilities as they progress through the game. This is kind of the way you look at Skyrim, and depending on what you choose. I'm always the high elf that wants to just do nothing but magic, right? And you feel that part, and you feel those the sigils, and you read the books and the tomes. You have to read books in order to gain the knowledge. You have to gain the knowledge in order to cast the spell, whether your ice spell or your fire spell is strong enough, and it actually progresses later on into these massive spells. But I think Skyrim, in the VR sense, and even in the regular platform, it gives the user the dream of what we really want Magic to be, right? We want to be the Gandalf, you know what I mean? Or you want to shoot the fireball and kill your enemy. Then okay, this is it. This is, and I'm sure there's plenty other games out there that do it, but for me, Skyrim is one of the best and is done very well. And even in the VR world, it's doing pretty good. So, have you ever played, Mike?
I love Skyrim. I
Skyrim.
absolutely love it. I can't tell you how much I love that game. And everything that Bethesda does is just great because they really do create like a they
Right?
just create a world, man. They like that is like I just think they're the coolest freaking company out there like when it comes to video games. Like I just think they kill it. It's great. But I love the portrayal of magic in Skyrim. Like one of the things that I always do is I always use magic mostly to heal, and it wasn't until later on that I finally kind of put that together because I work in the medical field, and I realized I was just like 90% of my magic in this game is to heal myself, to heal others. Like it's and so it really tripped me out, when I finally realized, like, a lot of like what you do in this realm you also kind of do in this virtual realm, and it just
In
reminds
others.
me of like that as within so without, as above so below, like those correspondences there. And yeah, absolutely love Skyrim. I love how they portray magic, and one of the things that I love about it is that idea that you have to consistently practice. You can be a conjurer, or you can be
Yeah.
mainly focus on the elementals, like you said, ice, fire, things like that. There are different kinds of magic even within Skyrim, so that's one of the things I love. And then on top of that, you have to practice it. You have to keep on doing it. You have to acquire knowledge from books and tomes. And so that's one of my favorite aspects of it. Is I think that Skyrim is probably one of the somewhat closer representations of how magic actually works out here, at least in a philosophical sense.
Yes, in a philosophical sense, I completely agree with you. Because if we were to say, okay, well, magic is what we read in books, Skyrim really pulls it off. I feel magic is portrayed in various forms of media in different ways, including fantastical and unrealistic, or practical and realistic. These portrayals can be influenced by culture and societal beliefs and attitudes, and they can shape our understanding and perception of magic. It is important, though, to recognize that media portrayal of magic may not necessarily reflect real life magical practices and beliefs. So, my takeaway with that is, in the media, we do have a lot of influencers, a lot of people backing shows and accounts, and a lot of the stuff that's out there isn't real, unfortunately. What is your take on that, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but well, I guess I would want to ask one question. Are you meaning like the stuff that is made by people who claim to be practitioners, or are you talking about like just the fact that it's a lot of like, um, you know, nonfiction? You know what I mean, kind of a thing, or
I think
fictional? I
there's a
guess I
lot of
should
people
say.
claiming to be practitioners, and yes, and I know there's self initiations in certain paths that you can do, but you and I both know that only goes so far. And self initiation can take you to a certain level of understanding in whatever practice you're in, but at some point you're going to need somebody who's gone beyond and can walk you through. That's why you need masters. And I feel in the magic world, um, they're not really focusing on that anymore. It's no longer your lineage, or who did you learn from, or what school or order are you from. It's more of, oh well, I wear a cool brim hat now, and I light candles and buy crystals. And a lot of people are playing it to the point to where it's, you know that's not real, that's not who you are. And to me, it's like being a fake Christian. It's you're pretending to be this person that you're not. And I feel that media, it makes it easy for you to do that, because IG and all of these social media platforms, they only see the winning. They never show the losing. They never show all the hard work that goes behind these things. They never show, the steps that we're taking. They just show the finished product, and the finished product can be adulterated and it can be changed and fixed. So for me, it's whenever I see somebody who's a practitioner, or I want to do research on you. Like, I want to know who you are, where'd you come from, who'd you learn from. And if I don't find any answers to that, then, well, I don't think that you're legit, and I gotta
Yeah.
pull your fucking Brujo card, bro. Like, so that's what I meant in the short sense of it all.
Yeah, like that's one of the things that does kind of, in many ways, and this is something that I probably need to eventually not be attached to, not be attached to this thing about, of other people. But it is one of those things that definitely hurts the Magic community in general, when most of what people care about is like the aesthetic. That's a big thing, is that if you're attractive, if you're a good looking person and like you have the right aesthetic kind of a thing going on, you can kind of pass yourself off as, uh, a legitimate resource on spiritual and magical practices. And that is definitely something where it leads people into wasting a lot of time. And one thing that I think that people need to realize is that you only have so many breaths, you only have so much time. Like, don't waste it on like these fake people. Find a really pure source of, um, find a really pure source that you can go to in order to be able to get this sense of fulfillment that you're looking for. Personally, I tried doing the self practitioner with nobody else around me, but ultimately I ended up going towards the Golden Dawn because I was recommended by a brother to, check it out, and that he was like, hey man, like, on my Masonic honor, this is legit. Like, this is not about ego. There's not a bunch of like weird alien stuff or anything like that. It's legit. And so I checked it out, and it's really helpful to have a mentor that I can go to and say, hey, I had this visualization, I had this experience during meditation or ritual. Can you help me work through it? Because a lot of times you're working through like childhood traumas, you're doing like obviously shadow work, path working, the tarot. So these are things where sometimes you kind of need a little bit of help, and it's nice to have help. It's kind of like in martial arts. Imagine if you just tried to completely teach yourself, jujitsu or karate. Like, I don't think that you would do very well in comparison to someone with a legit master. You're never going to be as good that way.
Yeah,
That's why mixed martial artists, like when they get actually come toe to toe with like a real, you know, martial artist, they usually get pretty whooped up. So yeah, so I think that that's how you can kind of tie the warrior ethic and the magician together in that way.
agreed. I believe the potential benefit of the mainstreaming of magic and media culture is that it can provide opportunities for magical practitioners to share their knowledge and experiences with a wider audience. By featuring in media, practitioners can reach a larger audience and potentially inspire more people to explore and practice magic. Perfect example, Jason Miller. When I met him, down to earth guy, really straight to the point, and he's legit. He's done the work. He's been around for a very long time. If there's somebody you want to learn from that has an online presence, it's him. You have Lon Milo Duquette. There's a bunch of people out there that really know their shit that, you should definitely seek. However, there are also potential drawbacks to the mainstreaming of magic and media culture. One potential drawback is that it can lead to the commercialization and commodification of magic. By portraying magic in mainstream and commercialized way, it can be reduced to simple entertainment, which becomes a marketing gimmick rather than being understood as serious and meaningful. This can lead into a superficial, distorted understanding of what magic is by the general public, and we kind of want to avoid that as much as possible. Did you want anything to add to that, Mikey?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, the the commercialization of magic is a easy way to dilute it, and it makes people think that, when they interact with somebody who might be like a real practitioner, they're just like, oh, like you just do some Harry Potter, stuff, like that's what you do. And they don't realize that ceremonial magic is more or less, when you really break it down, it's Western yoga. It is just a west. It's the yogic system, but with Western iconography and different aspects of things that we as Westerners can relate to and understand. And so ultimately, what spirituality and practicing is trying to achieve a sense of liberation. And so a lot of what like this commercialization does is make it where people who potentially could have been liberated because they decided, hey, I'm going to start this practice, they don't take it seriously, they don't think it's real, and so they just stay in this loop of samsara forever, this perpetual cycle of suffering throughout every single lifetime. When if you met the right people and if you've got the correct information, you would potentially embark on that path and become liberated spiritual person. You could be the next Buddha, as far as that's concerned, as long as the right person connects and they actually tap into a real stream of knowledge and information. But unfortunately, I think it's on purpose. I think that the overall economic structure that we have and social structures that we have, the consumerist structure that we have, is there to distract people so they don't wake up. They don't wake up from the dream of, oh, yeah, I'm not really Mike. I'm not really Shelby. I'm not really this or that person. I am God, and more or less in an incarnation here to learn something and to liberate myself. And so all this stuff, it completely throws people off those tracks. That they'll never reach that state of liberation because they're so distracted with this crap, more or less.
Agreed, Mike. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And in conclusion, overall, the portrayal of magic in media is a complex and multifaceted topic that touches upon a range of issues and themes that are relevant and interesting to explore. It is important to be aware of many ways in which magic is depicted in media and to recognize that these portrayals may not necessarily reflect real life magical practices and beliefs. So, with that, we're coming to the end, Mike. Thank you for listening to our episode on Magic and Media with Magick Mike. We hope that you found it informative and thought provoking. If you have any questions or experiences that you would like to share on the topic of magic and media, we invite you to share them with us on the social media channels, IG, YouTube, best ones to do it on. We would love to hear from you and engage in discussion about the fascinating topic. We also encourage you to explore the topic of magic and media further on your own. There are many resources available online and in print and can provide more information and insights on the subject. I recommend doing your own research and forming your own opinions. Mike, do you have any shout outs?
Yeah, man. Well, shout out to Keepers of the Word for hosting this moment that we could discuss something that's really, really important. And also shout out to my brothers at 323 in Whittier. Love you guys. And yeah, I think that that's it. And the only plug that I would really have is that I personally offer some, tarot readings and things like that. So if any of you guys are looking for some spiritual or alchemical counseling or a myriad of other questions that you can have, you can reach me at Magick Mike 770 and DM me, and we can work something out. We can do a reading and hopefully have a really beautiful experience together.
Awesome. Thank you, Mikey. And remember to always keep your word.